Nice. In my 5 years of planting food forests, there are few trees that I can speak with such passion and have so much reverence for. One of them is this cashew tree. And if you stick to the end, I'll show you how to germinate these little pups into this delightful tree that will grow this big in, well, this one's only 3 years old. So most people know the cashew just for the nut, but there's a whole lot more to it. Just about every part of this tree is edible and can be eaten just about right away, except for, funny enough, the nut. So what most people might know, and the reason why this is one of the most expensive nuts in the world, is because the husk around this single cashew is incredibly toxic. Now, while it's toxic, it's also very beneficial and has its medicinal uses, but under the right context. Now, in any case, if anyone takes a bite out of this, their lips and inner mouth will burn. So don't be one of those people. But what most don't know is that there's also this wonderful pear right here. This one's been eaten into, so I'm not gonna mess with that one. But this one that I just picked up as well is incredibly nutritious. This is rich in fiber. And the strategy, what you do is rip off the seed, which we'll be using to germinate into more trees. Wait, this one just fell. This guy right here is the cashew apple. Few people know this because it's very perishable. You can't have it on a shelf. And in fact, being that it's fallen off the tree, it's really only good for about 2 days. But it's incredibly high in fiber. Now it's difficult to chew, right? It's 60% soluble fiber and 40% insoluble, or actually maybe the other way around. I'm gonna take a big bite into it right now. Alright. So, the peel itself is very bitter, right? But inside is full of juices and that soluble fiber part. The insoluble is what I'm chewing on right now. Now, this apple, cashew apple, is incredibly rich in vitamin C and a whole lot of other stuff that I'll probably have listed or will share, and or you can check out yourself because it's hard to believe. Now, as I'm going about this, beyond the cashew apple, each one of these leaves has remarkable nutritional value. As in, when I have a toothache or some sort of pain, or I'm just throughout the season and I want the flavor of a cashew apple and I don't have one right now, I will brew this into a tea. What happens is this becomes almost translucent, and the water takes on this rich, full flavored and full bodied color and taste. And in that lie all of its incredibly nutritious, I keep saying incredibly because it's so freaking amazing, right? So the younger shoots, right now you can't see any young shoots because it's busy flowering. Now each one of these bushels can produce up to 4 or 5 cashews, but in the season when it's not flowering, it is making tiny, beautiful, cute little shoots that are multicolored and faceted. And in that, you can throw that into a salad. Again, it's gonna have that really bitter taste. These bitter flavors that I'm describing here, these are tannins. As you know, tannins are also beneficial, they're nutritious, but they come with that flavor to kick some animals away, but if you have that acquired taste, you're not gonna mind it. Now, I mean, where to start? So, beyond the fact that the leaves are just about, I can't, medical reasons, go ask your doctor, whatever, but there is a long list of beneficial and nutritious values. And one of those big reasons that exist is because this tree is so well established. It's that in its first year, it makes such a deep taproot, and it obviously is searching for its minerals and everything it needs to make such a delicious and wonderful fruit, as well as the cashew nut, that in that process, it brings up all these beneficial nutrients, and in its genetics and everything that makes this thing so wonderful, carries all those amazing properties. Now, another unknown, lesser known fact is that branches in the past, these little ones, were used as toothbrushes. So I mean, just within this, I wish I could describe it to you. It's like every part of this tree tastes like a characteristic of its own fruit and of its own. But regardless, this, being it's so rich and high in minerals, it helps support enamel. It does all those things, right? It helps toothache. I keep going back to toothache because it's been the thing that's come up the most, especially when my neighbors have toothache. I'm the one that shows up and says, with a bushel of cashew leaf tea, or cashew leaves, I'm the one that suggests making a tea, and almost immediately or the next day they come to me and say, Neema, it's remarkable, it works. And everyone's so surprised, but this medicine grows just about everywhere here. I'm gonna keep eating this. So it's been nearly 2 weeks that this tree in particular and all the other cashews in this field have been spawning their fruit. Now, it doesn't happen all at once, which I appreciate a lot, because this cashew apple is so amazing that when I pick a whole bunch and take them inside, or pick the ones that have fallen, they don't last that long on the shelf. So they're best eaten fresh. In fact, as soon as they turn red, if I touch this, it just snaps off. And therein lies just some of the most beautiful Garden of Eden-like colors. There are a few varieties or colors of cashews. The cashew apple, the cashew tree. The two that I'm most familiar with are the red and the yellow. So what I found is that the red cashew likes the more humid, it can be kind of in the shade, but where I am right now is heavy clay soil. And for half the year during the rainy season, it's very swampy. Now the yellow cashew, I've seen it thrive on streets where, just like native ficus or everything else that would look really like it's struggling in the dry season, it's doing just fine. That leads me into the next point. Being a subtropical and tropical food forest steward, if there are others out there, you know that sometimes it can be a challenge, right? When it comes to a lot of tropical, subtropical fruit trees and at the rate the jungle grows, my success rate maybe at its best is like 50%. As I've matured and experienced more of the seasons and the cycles, I can bump that number up. But when it comes to the cashew tree, I have a near 90-100% success rate. And this comes as well from germinating them or from planting them from the ones that have been germinated, or buying them from the stores and planting them successfully, wherein they thrive and they survive for that first year. Now, a big reason for that, I think, is its prolific growth. The fact that its taproot is so well established and seems to be just fine in the dry season. In some of my previous videos, or in the past, I've talked about how, what we want are beautiful, functional, and resilient trees in our front yards, in our jungles, in our, a lot of times people will plant ornamental stuff for its aesthetics, but we can also have fruiting, functional, medicinal things as well that serve as ornamental and resilient, and they can look sharp. The cashew is high up on that list for me. The cashews that I have, those trees growing up closer to my front, like zone 1 area, they look wonderful in the dry season. They aren't struggling whatsoever. They're lush and are constantly producing new foliage. And you can't tell here, but when a tree is producing new foliage, a cashew tree, the colors that come out of those early leaves are red and yellow until they mature into this green. And the same goes with the fruit. So much can be said about this tree just in its beauty. I know I saw this somewhere, but there's a place where there's a cashew tree that's like 100 or maybe 1,000 years old, and it produces like tens of thousands of fruits. It's so remarkable. All right, so practically speaking, you want to plant one. What's the timeline? Now, traditional cashew trees in other environments, not talking about Central America, they'll take about 3 years to produce. And that is the case if you're looking at production of more than, let's say, 10, 20 cashews at a time, where you want to let the tree focus on producing fruit and not just continue growing. Now, there are dwarf varieties, and I can't speak much about that, but those will yield in about 1 year. So in about 5 years, where peak nut production happens between 7 to 10 years, you can expect to harvest 10 to 20 kilos of nut per tree annually. So that's 30 kilograms under ideal condition, but that would be your yield. But now, what if we shifted that frame? Stop thinking about the cashew as a nut tree with a long wait. Think of it as a tree that's already producing medicine from its leaves in year 1, fruit from year 1, 2, and builds towards nut production for a long-term payoff. So here's the bottom line. One cashew tree, properly positioned, properly understood, is a nut producer, a fruit producer, a daily medicine source, a soil builder, and a zero-waste system, where even the shell has industrial value. Most people plant it and wait years for the nut. That's leaving 90% of the value on the ground. if you're building a food forest, designing a land system, or just trying to understand what your land can actually produce, the cashew tree deserves a completely different position in your thinking. Not as a secondary tree, but an anchor species with multiple value streams running from year one. All right, a couple housekeeping notes, reality of the growth of a cashew. I'm standing in front of a 3-year-old yellow cashew that I planted. By the way, notice the colors coming out of, where are you? Here in my blown out camera angle, or lighting. You can see how some of the colors of these younger leaves, the way they come out, just stunning. But now, unlike most nut trees, they'll grow tall rather slowly because they're developing a hard wood. The cashew doesn't do that so much. It'll grow upright really fast, but it won't really have much to support itself. And it's always looking to kind of lean, because even those leaning branches, they're not going to snap. They will produce fruit, but it sprawls out in this way. So pruning is really important, right? Making sure you have the desired size, the height, and also coppicing. So at the top here, if we can catch this, I had to coppice this tree so that it would start to branch out because it was getting too tall. And also I'm using this new structure behind me and the roof to support it in a way that, being the wind direction is coming from out in front of me, that this tree can have a bit more support in its strength and growth. All right, let's talk about germination. So in order to make the harvest worth it is in, roasting these and peeling off this rather chemically burning peel, the husk that it has. It takes a bit of work, right? And maybe it needs to be worth it. So the first few years you might even just try to propagate the cashews you have, because the first 1 or 2 years you might get a few, and then after the 5th year you might have a justifiable harvest and roast. So the way that you roast these would be, you make a fire, you gather up all the cashew nuts, you throw them into the fire just as so, and it's amazing how durable these are in the flame. Once these have been exposed to enough heat, then you can hopefully safely peel the cashew husk. So it's funny, in Central America, there's a guy we call him the cashew guy. He sells he sells a pound of cashews for about $10. And if you look at his fingertips, you know exactly why you're paying $10 for a pound, because when you work in cashews for a long time and you're not necessarily being as safe, but maybe just doing what you're used to, your fingertips will turn black. And this is from the effect of peeling and discarding the husk of these cashews. So maybe in your first year, just practice germination and having more of the cashew tree, because if you've gathered anything from this video, it's that it does remarkably well in the subtropical climates and is one of those heavy providers and amazing, enjoyable fruits that you want around. I mean, imagine this. I love throwing these in the blender because first you get that insoluble fiber really shredded up so you can drink it, and just for every other nutritional value. But the biggest thing when you're germinating, I think I almost blew over my germination station. These seeds are very susceptible to rot, right? So when I first did this, the cashew man, I asked him for some advice, and he said, make sure you sun dry these so that they're properly hardened, and then just put them in a soil bag. Now, he must have variable success, because in my first year of doing so, half of these seeds rotted and the other half did not. So the lesson was, after witnessing one of my cashew trees that is sitting in an area where about half of the ground below it is just gravel and the rest is soil, I found that all the cashews that fell right on the gravel, they all germinated in the wet season. So it brought on this method that I'm about to show you. So using any kind of growing tray, bucket, call it whatever you will, you want to have a really well-draining substrate. So I have some gravel that's lying around just behind me in this driveway area that I call as part of my backyard. So what I do is I take my germination tray and pull all the seeds that I want to germinate out and lay them right on top. So what this is going to do is, until the rains start heavily showing up, this is going to give them adequate time to dry. Because right now, if I press this, it's still soft. So what you want to do is really dry and harden the exterior so that when the rains start to happen more steadily and this draining, well-aerated substrate is still moist and saturated, that all those seeds will then start to germinate. Alright, so keeping it really simple, I'm taking all these seeds, try to rip off as much flesh as you can, but honestly it doesn't matter because they are going to sit here dry. I'm not watering this tray. In fact, at the end of this I'm going to leave it somewhere that can't be reached by my dog and any other animals. So really cool thing, another amazing point about the cashew, every part of this fruit is edible to all living things except for the husk, obviously, right? But your dog will know right away just from its scent that it's not something that you want to mess with. So again, right, just taking the fruit, twisting off the nut, and don't forget to enjoy the fruit. I can't help it, I take a bite out of each one of them. Again, abundance means why not? This thing just leaks. Beautiful, amazing. Wow. A lot of people don't like it, but who cares? I love it. And you might too. When you read about all the beneficial properties, and I mean, hey, let's just say it, when you experience how solid your bowel is the next day, you'll know why this is such a desirable fruit. And the fact that they don't all mature and fall at once is just another added benefit. So you can continuously go back, pluck one, throw it in your smoothie, save the seeds you want to save, and rinse and repeat. So it's really fun because last year I had done this, and the point of germinating so many of them is to share them. A lot of young people in food forests, folks have a hard time keeping trees alive. Not all of us are so diligent about the work. God knows the jungle in the tropics can overpower your fruit trees. But to my friends that I had given cashew trees to, the fact that in their first year they sent me a photo and showed me how that single trailing branch has a cluster of flowers and then one cashew amongst those flowers survived, to see them light up, and it can be that easy. Now it's obviously circumstance. It's the environment, it's all the conditions. If it's right, then that one bushel of flowers will make a single cashew in that first year. But again, it's a really good positive feedback loop, right? We want to see the fruits of our labors. Now in that first year, giving that fruit to a donation box, giving it away, giving it to a friend, giving it back to the earth, such that every year you may receive an even more bountiful harvest. It's not a bad deal. One more for the gram.